Hello, my name is Alex Isles and welcome to the Cellar, or as it's also been known, the garrison room of Newcastle's castle. Now, it's called the garrison room because a local antiquarian called John Collingwood Bruce, and antiquarians were the people who, before historians and archaeologists existed, would gather together items, artifacts and bits of stories of history and write books about them. And John Collingwood Bruce theorised in his book and his history of Newcastle and Newcastle's castle that this was the garrison room where the soldiers would sleep and live while they were in the castle, because obviously the soldiers in his mind were not very high status individuals. Now, the reality of it is that during the Middle Ages, this room right here, what he calls the garrison room, was actually the cellar of the castle, and this is where the food and drink would have been kept. So when you were down here, you would have all of the things needed to maintain the troops who lived inside the castle, the garrison, and also any other people who lived and worked inside the castle as well during their daily lives. So it was quite an important location. Even as I stand here today, it's quite a cold room. The thick walls mean it insulates the cold in and works just like a modern day fridge or a freezer. So it would be fantastic for preserving food like food and beer and wine and other resources as well. The other benefit as well for it is that it's really quite close to the supply routes. So just coming out here, you can see the modern day accessibility entrance to the castle. And that accessibility entrance was also probably built on the same site as a medieval entrance to the castle's cellar. And it also lines up perfectly with the medieval quayside, or the quayside of Newcastle today. So if you've got goods coming in from Europe or from other parts of the British Isles, they're coming along the river, they're unloaded down on the quayside, they're brought up here, and then it's the path of least resistance to bring them inside the cellar right here to store them so they can be used by the garrison, the troops, or the royal family if they're staying here in the castle. So it's a really good and clever system to ensure the castle stays supplied. On top of this as well, just inside the central pillar, there's another wonderful feature which I'll do another video on, but right here where there's this hole inside the pillar, that in the Middle Ages was actually where there would be a lead pipe coming out, and it's the water supply for the cellar. Throughout the whole of the castle, there's actually a plumbing system, which means that if you pulled out a cork there, or another means of stopping it from opening, you could bring out water that would be fresh, and you could drink it and have access to that throughout the whole of the castle. So again, that backs up the idea of it being a cellar, because fresh water could be used maybe to dilute sauces, it could be used to dilute wine, or it could also just be used as well for all the workmen who are coming up and down the quayside, bringing all the goods up here to have a fresh drink of water before they went down to go down to the boats on the riverside again and pick up goods and bring them back up to the castle. So there's a lot of reasons why that might be here. When you also think of a lower room of a castle, you probably also think of medieval dungeons. And the thing is that after the Middle Ages, the castle ceased to be used as a military site and fell into disrepair. And during the Tudor period, the castle was actually adopted as a prison. So if I bring you down here, just again on the central pillar, you can see an iron loop in the wall. And if I just bring you over to the other side here, you can see another iron loop. All around the outside of this room, there are iron loops put into the walls, and there would have been a chain running through them. As this chain ran around, prisoners could be brought in here and chained to the walls, and they would be left here until they were taken for trial and then eventually sentenced. Now, as I said before, this room is quite cold, and if you imagine damp has come in as well because it's a ruin, this would have been a very unpleasant place to be kept. Newcastle is also a surprisingly windy city, so when the cold winds are coming through the castle and you're in a cool, damp room, this is going to be a highly unpleasant place. And in the 18th century, we actually have writings from government civil servants who are going around and assessing the prisons of the British Isles, and they actually say that this was one of the worst prisons in England because of its cold, damp conditions and very inhumane treatment of prisoners. You can see the modern castle today has also leaned into this, and they've got medieval pillories and locations for chaining up prisoners displayed in the room as well. So if you ever visit Newcastle's castle, which I strongly suggest you do, it's a very good idea to come down here, and you could put your loved ones into the pillory and make fun of them, and obviously that creates a lot of fun for visitors, especially with children. Jumping forwards in the centuries, as we come to the Second World War, the cellar of the castle was used again as an air raid shelter because the castle's walls are strong. They're designed to resist siege weapons, and later on cannon fire was actually used against the castle, and the castle resisted it. So this room itself was perfect as an air raid shelter to defend against bombing from the Luftwaffe. So you can imagine, as the air raid sirens went off, coming inside of the castle and sleeping in here for the night and waiting for the all clear to be sounded so you could return to your homes. And it's a wonderful example of how an ancient historical site has been reused in a modern set way to protect and look after people, just as it probably was intended in the Middle Ages to look after and protect an area for the monarch back then. I really hope you've enjoyed this story of how I've shown this room in the castle was not only a location for storing food and drink and weapons for the garrison, but then turned into a Tudor prison, and then later on was an air raid shelter, and how it's got so many purposes in Newcastle's history. I really hope you'll join me for another video soon, and that you've enjoyed this one, and I look forward to seeing you in another video in the near future. Until then, stay safe and well, and speak soon.